Welcome to the Physical Product Movement, a podcast by Fiddle. We share stories of the world's most ambitious and exciting physical product brands to help you capitalize on the monumental change in how, why, and where consumers buy. I'm your host, Ken Ojuka. In this episode of the Physical Product Movement podcast, I speak with Mia Medina, founder and CEO of Gather Brands, a full-service marketing management agency that focuses on women-owned and women-run companies in the CPG industry. Mia has tons of experience from launching her CPG brands to working in sales for some of the biggest and nationally distributed brands like Odwalla. In this interview, she talks about common mistakes that she's seen brands make when they try to break into retail, exciting and big trends brands are riding to success, and the importance of deeply understanding your customer and why they choose your product. She was a great guest, and I think you'll learn a lot from her. Enjoy. All right, Mia, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks so much.
Yeah, where are you calling us from?
Today I'm in LA, but I'm actually based in San Diego.
Oh, okay. Have you been there long? Did you
No,
grow up in California? Or?
Yeah, I grew up in California, and I have been in San Diego for the past 15 years.
Okay, awesome. Well, obviously the weather there is amazing, and so I'm sure everybody listening is jealous. But you know what's funny is I love California, and I actually really like Northern California. I'm kind of a tech guy, so the whole Silicon Valley area is nice fun.
Yep.
But it's like every time I go, I'm so excited, and then I hit traffic. And as soon as I get stuck in traffic, I'm like, I don't know if I could do this,
Yeah, it's definitely different. I grew up in Northern California, and it was definitely, I hear you. It's hard to go back, but it's also so beautiful. There's so many amazing spots there. So.
Yeah, I actually feel the same way about New York. We had family back east, and we'd go to New York, and I'd be excited, and then I get stuck in traffic, and I'm like, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah.
So maybe I just don't like traffic. Maybe that's the commonality. So
totally, that's here too. We definitely have a lot of that in LA and San Diego. So
yeah, got it. So we generally like to kick off the podcast with just a quote or something that's meaningful or impactful to you. Is there one that comes to mind that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, it's funny. I think something that I've always used with my kids, as well as it's translated into business, is choose your battles wisely. That's been one that I think I like to live by. And it really like translates more into like, don't sweat the small stuff, right? Like, is it a big deal or is it a small deal?
Is there an example of something like that or where that's been really helpful to think in that way?
Well, obviously with my kids, it's always kind of when they were younger, a lot younger, when I could have them sort of take a step back. And my son, who's 20 now, still says, we've always told us, choose our battles wisely. And I think it would help, where they were arguing. But I think in business, it just helps me sort of keep things in perspective, whether it's losing a brand or a contract negotiation or something. It's like, is it really that big of a deal? And so it helps me just sort of like level set.
And really keeping focused on the other way you could say this is, only focus or try to focus on the things that are most important. Right. Yeah. And generally there's, 3 or 4 balls that you can't drop, but everything else is okay. It's a nice to have.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, tell us just a little bit about your background. How'd you end up in Southern California and running Gather Brands? How did that all happen?
Yeah, no, I actually just started Gather in August of 2020. So it's a really new company, but I have been in the natural products industry for over 20 years. And like I said, I grew up in Northern California. So I lived there, was there pretty much up until my adulthood. And I ended up getting a job with natural specialty sales. Prior to the natural channel, I was in the sports specialty industry. Mm-hmm. So I was mountain biking and doing things like that. But then I found a position with a girlfriend of mine, worked for a company called NS Sales. It's a natural division of Acosta. And so it was kind of perfect timing. It was I had the Eureka Arcata Corridor, and that was kind of my foray into all things, retail, where I learned all of my acronyms, your OIs, MCBs, SRPs and things. And I had amazing co-ops. And so learning all of that with them was awesome because they were just stoked to see somebody because people didn't really do that route often because it was so far out there, but I loved it. And so I worked there for about 5 years, worked my way up to manage the Southern California or the Northern California region, and then moved to Southern California and couldn't stay on there. But when I got to San Diego, ended up finding a position with Odwalla. And so that was kind of amazing because it was the complete opposite of everything that I had been doing, where it was all UNFI and KE, or at the time, Mountain Peoples, or whoever it was, turn of order, and it was the retailer to the distributor. Then Odwalla, you get there and it's basically like every truck is its own little company with its own OpEx, and so you're delivering product directly to the stores. It's one brand. So my account base really expanded there. And that was also an amazing experience because I did everything from national to regional account, or regional to national accounts, as well as food service. So one of my accounts was Chipotle, where I was managing like hundreds of thousands of gallons of lime juice, which nobody even knew that Odwalla was in Chipotle because that's all they
didn't know that.
Yeah. So like 39 broadlanders with all this lime juice. So they used it in the rice. So that was an amazing experience. And that's where I met my husband. He had been there for quite some time as well. And he was kind of addicted to Diet Coke. So he,
like a lot of us. Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. So he had a little bit of a problem, and me being from NorCal and being like, oh my gosh, that aspartame is going to kill you, So he decided, well, I'm going to try and make something natural that still solves all of those things, which is the carbonation, a little bit of sweetness, and a little caffeine. So he kind of started putting this soda together. And then I ended up being like, okay, I think this has legs. So I quit my job and jumped in, and we decided, because we knew DSD, that we were going to distribute it ourselves. So we thought, well, let's get some products on the truck. We'll get a truck and get some products on there and generate some revenue for our first production run. So we did that. And about 4.5 years later, we still had no soda company to speak of, but we had this really thriving DSD company called Green Shoots Distribution. And we ended up expanding into 8 of the 11 Whole Foods regions. And they were kind of we were kind of their solution for a national DSD partner, which was cool because at the time you had, all of these emerging brands that they couldn't work with these larger distributors. It was crippling to their system. So it was great. It was obviously different times. I could go and I would be working with their foragers and finding products at farmers markets. And it was like we would have powwows with our buyers. And at that time, I could call my buyer in the Rockies and tell him, hey, I'm going to be, in Boulder next week. Do you want to hook up? And he's like, yeah, come on by. It's very different, but it was really great. And that was really where I got my sort of like that passion for these emerging brands came from. It was amazing. I think the excitement of pioneering a brand and getting authorizations and approvals for these smaller brands that are really excited to grow and scale. But it was also kind of like a Rubik's Cube because I was like a buyer and a seller. I had to make sure the products that I was bringing onto the trucks would be, products that we could get into some of these regional accounts and then expand out from there. And then which ones were scalable to go into new regions and things like that. So it was really awesome.
And was that through, I'm seeing a couple companies here. So was that through Wave Soda that initially morphed into this, or was it? No,
actually, it was actually called Noontime. It was totally different.
Okay.
I'll get there.
Lots of experience, right?
That was the funny thing, is that the soda didn't ever happen because we got so busy with this distribution company. So we grew quickly and had to take on some investors. And as I'm sure, a lot of people, yourself included, probably know that not all investors are good partners. And so we had a couple that were not good partners. And so we cut ties from that and took some time off, had a baby. And then decided, let's get the soda company going again. My husband's like, let's do it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. So we kind of revamped everything and reformulated and then launched Wave Soda. And so I said, okay, he's an operational guru. He's done sales. He's done pretty much everything. So I said, I'll go ahead and work on UNFI, KE, and all the local accounts. And then I'll go get the job with benefits and a paycheck, right? We can't all live the startup dream. And so that's what I did. And so actually super serendipitously, I was put back into touch with my manager from NS Sales from 17 years prior. And Acosta had just bought Ignite. I ended up finding a position with Ignite. It was really cool because it was a sales consulting company, which I really enjoyed because rather than a broker who's kind of more that liaison between a brand and a retailer, we were much more involved with our brands, where we were more just like an extension of their sales team. And I really enjoyed that. And so I did that for about 2 years, and then COVID hit. And so once, that happened, but again, it's a massive corporation and it cost us. So it didn't actually affect me. And when it was really bad in March and April, it wasn't until July that my position was eliminated. So by that time, I had seen so much response from buyers, and people were they were, wanting to see better for you products. Premium products were on the rise. We've got a global pandemic. So people are really taking care of themselves and wanting good things in their bodies. And so when that happened, it was kind of like the blessing in disguise, because I thought, right now the job market is going to be tough. I can go and spend some time, maybe a year, trying to find a good fit, or I can, get back to my roots and really focus on some of these emerging brands. But I think one of the things that I kept sort of going back to is, it's such a male-dominated industry. And I think that women really create products out of purpose and passion. And so there seems to be a lot of times what's missing is just how to get it on the shelf. And so I thought, you know what, I'm really just going to focus on female found brands and really trying to help them and scale and, get them on the shelf and work with them on how to do that. And so that's really how Gather Brands was born. And we just work with female found products. And once we take a brand on, we basically are an extension of their sales team. There's that, there's the buzzword going around right now, the fractional CEO or fractional VP of sales or things like that.
Yep.
That's how we come in, and that's how we're a lot different than really a broker, because we are so much more involved in their day-to-day business than just the retailer aspect of it.
Okay. And what type of brands, do you guys have a particular specialty?
Yeah. So obviously female found. And then we focus on the natural and specialty channel. The brands that we work with and that are really the things that are important to us are obviously all natural products, organic, non-GMO, ideally, or working towards it, and definitely have some sustainability measures in place. And that's a focus for them. Because those are the things that are important to us as well. So that, as long as they align with us there. And then obviously innovation, it can be a long sales cycle. So we're always looking for products that are, sort of filling that space, filling a need.
Right. Okay, so I'd love to dig into that a little bit. There's lots of areas actually that we could sort of double click on, but areas where I think you kind of bring a unique perspective, and obviously all your experience, I think would be really helpful with the audience. So you talked about this trend that you saw during COVID, and it's a trend I think that's been going on for much longer, but I think like a lot of things, COVID kind of brought some of these things to the forefront. With the better for you brands and products and, just the consumer changing their buying habits in that respect. Could you maybe talk about that just a little bit and help us sort of understand, what that trend is and what exactly is going on and maybe how it affects their go-to-market?
Well, I think, yeah, and that's it might be a little bit threefold, but I think just for the most part, with the things that people are looking for are going to be, is it whatever is better for you? Is it going to be an adaptogen? Obviously, those are really big right now. Things that are going to make you feel better, right? And they're going to help your system, your immune system. Everybody, COVID is a real thing. It's really happening, right? So we want to do things and take care of our body in a way that, maybe a little bit more attentive to it than we have been in the past. As far as the changing of the buying habits, that actually is how the brand can sort of react, because unfortunately people aren't perusing aisles of the stores anymore. We've got Whole Foods, right? Where like people might not be just going in and walking around, if they're even going into the store themselves. A lot of people are doing this Instacart thing. So it's really important that the brands have a really strong online and digital presence when getting into these retailers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a guy an analyst, a tech analyst actually that I listen to. It's a guy named Ben Thompson, and he talks about sort of the big tech companies and some of the trends and the effects on society and the world. But he actually said something really interesting about COVID, which was that, what he saw is that COVID, didn't necessarily change or create new behavior. what he's seen is most of the time it's just accelerated trends that were already happening, and just COVID just made them even more important. So an example is this, sort of Instacart, delivered grocery thing.
Right.
It was going on well before COVID, but it's like COVID was just sort of like a shot in the arm for that. And it just pushed it way forward, maybe
No pun intended.
yeah, 10, 15 years, it just accelerated it, where
the same thing goes
so
for
many people are
Zoom,
doing that.
right?
Say that again.
Same thing goes for Zoom. You look at people were kind of dabbling in some of these Zoom meetings and doing them, but it's like once COVID hit, it's like, I might have 6 a day,
Yeah. Well, and what you said about the direct to consumer, how important that channel is for brands now. Whereas, you could have set up a brand before, and you can still do it today. It's just a lot harder if you don't have a web presence and the ability for customers to buy directly from you and to interact directly with your company. Yes, you can still go through, all the distributors, all that, but it really helps to have your own, direct connection to the consumer.
100%. I think that's what the brands are seeing too, where you can kind of, you really get to know your consumer, and you can launch, random flavors or offerings or SKUs and see what's going to stick before you go and present that to retail. The other piece that's nice about that's been really cool is that you have an idea of where your consumers are. It used to be you had to build your brand in your backyard, so like where you were located. But now with the whole D2C business, it might be that, you could be based in Southern California, but you've got a massive Florida, consumer base. So then does that make sense then to go and look at expanding retail there before going to maybe, Texas, or working your way out, things like that. So there's a ton to learn from it as well, which it's been amazing to see.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've seen from some of our customers is where they build a really strong direct to consumer channel, set up Amazon or selling, very strongly on Amazon. And then they actually get approached, by distributors and by buyers,
right,
that want to bring in their product.
Totally.
And if you just think about the position that you're in that respect, where they're coming to you, you just have a lot more leverage and negotiating power, when it comes to that channel.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Is there an example of a brand that you've worked with, and maybe some of the lessons that you learned from that engagement that you could share with us?
It's funny. I always say, you learn a lot more about what not to do than what to do when you're starting companies and things like that. But I think one of our brands was when we were working with Little Bucks. It was, she was a very good example of having a market outside of her territory that was a really strong, it was just a stronger market. And then her direct to consumer business was so strong that it just gave us a ton of data to look at and to say, okay, these are where the retailers are. So then when we could go to retailers and say, look, we already have a consumer base here. So this is, this would make sense to open up, this market and that kind of thing. So being able to share that with the retailers and show them, we're not just saying because we're women owned or because we're a cool brand, or, it really helps in that presentation to be able to share that they have an existing consumer base.
And what was the name of the brand again? What do they do?
That was Little Bucks.
Okay, Little Bucks. Okay, and what's their product?
They have a buckwheat. They've got actually 2 different products. They have a buckwheat that you would use as like a topping, so a sprouted buckwheat, and then they also have the cluster bucks, which is a new line for her. And she's out of Chicago, but she's been doing great.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website now. Just found it. There's so many of these niches and these brands that it's like I would never have known that these guys exist.
Right. I know and that's what's so fun, I will say, is, that sort of finding these brands and finding, these really unique products and unique offerings, because they are, this is, you can see even, Target, Costco, like all of these bigger retailers are also looking at this emerging brand space in a way that they haven't before. And so that's exciting. It's exciting. We've got, one of our brands is in Target. And so that's pretty rare that you kind of start in Target and then go into the rest of retail, right? So we have a lot of learnings from that as well. And she's amazing. She's done a great job. But Caitlin with Pulp Chips and Pulp Pantry, and she's an upcycled an upcycled chip she's just done an amazing job. So she did the Target Accelerator program. And so, now we're working on getting into some of the retailers in the natural and specialty. So it's kind of interesting to do it the reverse way. But when you have retailers that like Target and Costco that are starting to change how how they're looking for new brands, it helps tell that story.
Yeah. Do you mind actually double clicking on that accelerator program that they have at Target? Because you are starting to see more of these come up, pop up with different retailers. But yeah, could you just maybe tell us a little bit about that accelerator?
Well, they have actually quite a few. So there are some different ones, but sometimes it just depends on which one. They actually have a whole Black owned where they're working with the BIPOC companies. They have a female found one. They have a bunch of different accelerators that they work with and that they work brands on. And then, so Caitlin she was one of their, she was actually one of the first ones maybe 2 years ago. And it was where it was kind of an intensive, program where you worked with their buyers as well as their sourcing. And so it had a whole different, a myriad of things that she could take away from that. And it wasn't even guaranteed to get placement, but she, worked in such a way and she had a really unique product. So, it got her placement into Target.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, the reason I even bring that up is I think a lot of people just aren't even aware that these options are there. Right.
Yeah.
Between the accelerators that the retailers, really push, but there's just a lot of different accelerators that can help get a brand off the ground.
Totally.
So, I think it'd be useful for the listener to, maybe understand, what you could do for a brand, right? Like, let's say that you launched, you launched a new product, in one of these sort of emerging brands in one of these interesting, better for you categories. And there's a sustainability piece to it, all of those things, woman owned, so it's right in your sweet spot of somebody that you could help. What are some of the, the areas that you would start looking at initially, and what could you actually help them with?
Yeah. So we really, like I said, we work as basically an extension of their team. So we'll look at what regions. We have several regions. We can start, in a couple of those. A lot of brands, obviously, you're not ready to start nationally. So we would, decide, okay, look at maybe some of their direct to consumer information, see what regions make the most sense to start. And then at that point, we manage the whole sales cycle. So everything from managing category review schedules, we actually fill the paperwork out as well for all of the retailer, whether it's new item forms, promotional forms, distributor forms. We do all of that because it's very timely, and that if we're really an extension of your team, we are, that's on us to do. And then the other piece of it is that it can also be very expensive. If you do have an error on one of those, whether it's, a distributor form, they say right there, they can charge you, so it can be really expensive to mess up a UPC code and have it not identified until the product hits the shelf. Then you've gone through several ways. Several channels that you're going to have to go back and fix. So we kind of have, I usually say it's like one Bible that you complete for us. And once that's done, then we have everything that we need to complete new items at the distributor level, at the retailer level. We work with them on promotional planning. We will, work with them on expansion into new retailers and new regions. So really everything that falls under that, retail sales aspect of it.
Okay, and of course you bring, your years in the industry and all your contacts along the way, and it sounds like you could recommend, specific retailers for their product, and what you think would do well in different retailers. Is that part of it as well? Is that what you kind of mean by the, the category review schedules? But you're kind of looking at them holistically. Okay, where can these guys find distribution? Where should we place them?
Yes.
Well, really, right?
Yeah. And it's really more region based, is what region makes most sense, because chances are they're going to be, because we only work in the natural specialty channel, we're not calling on conventional. So most of our brands wouldn't be ready for conventional. There are a lot of crossovers, I will say, but a lot of, having the key attributes that we do look for, you're going to want to succeed in natural specialty before trying to branch out into some of those larger conventional chains. But so, yeah, I mean, that's the figuring out which regions make the most sense. And then just, going after the accounts that we have within each region. So we have, 5 regions. We have it broken down into a north, basically west, north, and west, south. There's central, there's east, and then there is e-commerce as well. That's been a huge area that we have our vice president of sales, Summer Rod, and she's taken that and really expanded that out. So it just, wherever it makes sense for them to be expanding into and what retailers would be a good fit.
Yeah. Could you maybe, double click on the significance of the regions, and what type of products would, make sense in different regions?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to, it's not always just going to be your backyard. So you might be based in Northern California, but if your direct to consumer business is huge in the Northeast, it might make sense to expand out your retail footprint in the East as well as your Northern California, home base, because you do have a consumer base there. And so, obviously you also know that's a region where, people are really interested in your product. And that's, again, a lot of times it's going to be Northeast and SoCal, those are very obviously densely populated, but as well as, I think really forward thinking with trends and emerging brands and that kind of thing as well. So we will work with them to identify which regions make the most sense.
Yeah. So I'm curious about, different, trends that you're seeing in sort of the better for you category. Are there some that you're kind of keeping an eye on, certain class of products that you think will do well in the future? Are there any examples that come to mind?
I mean, I think that as far as in the future, I don't, no, not necessarily. I think I can see what's happening now. And there are certain, obviously, this whole plant-based, no matter what it is, I think that has just been amazing to watch and see like, wow, there's now plant-based salmon or those kinds of things are just fascinating to me. I actually we don't have any in our portfolio. And then the upcycled, I think is amazing. I really am excited to see where that goes and sort of how that can grow. That's been really exciting. And we also enjoy working with products or companies that are working with adaptogens right now, because that's a really hot trend, but it's also really cool.
Yeah, important for help through COVID and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and you mean you can't tell the future? You can't tell us what's going to be hot, like
I wish I would just make it.
Well, let's maybe switch gears a little bit. I want to maybe talk about some of the mistakes that you see, brands make, and, maybe some advice on how to avoid, the most common ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that we really preach and practice a lot is going, a mile deep and an inch wide. I think oftentimes brands might think they want to be in 3,000 doors or retailers or whatever they want to call it. And I think the biggest takeaway from that is really like, you want to be in the right doors, right? You want to have your good turns in the right stores for you and where your consumers are shopping. It's not just about store count. And I think that's a very common mistake that I see where it's expanding too quickly, too broadly and too quickly.
Yeah. And let's finish that thought, so brands that expand too quickly, too broadly, what happens? What are some of the negative effects of that?
Yeah, I mean, when you expand into any retailer, there has to be support behind it, right? So it's either a trade, there's obviously trade spend, there's going to be marketing push, so you have to have the resources to be able to support a launch into every retailer at this point. And, this goes back to sort of those trends that we were talking about where people aren't perusing aisles and reading labels and they're going in, they're getting what's on their list, and then they're leaving if they're even shopping for themselves. Mm-hmm. So you need to have a really good digital marketing campaign, and whether you're geo-targeting or, so it's really hard to do that when you're going, when you're spreading out too quickly. And if you can't support that, then how does your product get off the shelf? Right? So getting it on the shelf is that one piece. And then if your product doesn't move, you're going to get discontinued. And so, if you don't have the resources behind it for a national or multi-regional launch, then you're setting yourself, you're not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. And we see that too. And the other side is, which is kind of a similar thing, is just expanding, too many product lines or too many SKUs, in one go if you don't have the resources to support that.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And anything else? Any other, pieces of advice, maybe common mistakes that that you see brands make?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just knowing your consumer, really getting to know your consumer and being able to tell that story. I think a lot of times because brands are so innovative, there is a lot of consumer education that needs to happen. And so we have one product, it's called Good Milk. It's amazing, but it's a frozen plant-based beverage, right? It's just almond, hemp, and oat. But it goes in the frozen category. So she's done a really good job of, she's got a great marketing campaign, and she's done a really great job of sort of getting that word out there. And we just launched in Gelson's. So now it's doing that push in and around where all of the Gelson's are, and making sure that that her existing consumers or customers know that they can find it there, and then sharing about her product and how it's different and all of the key attributes, that it's fortified with ingredients and all of those cool things, and educating her consumers. So I think it's, really making that effort to know your consumer and educate, if you've got a really innovative product.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, Mia. I think that's some really good advice that people could apply immediately. Let's start wrapping up here. I wanted to switch over to the quick fire round. I've got 4 questions for you. Just want to hear the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
Oh dear. Yeah.
All right. Maybe you can tell us one tool or resource that has helped you the most in your current position.
Oh my God, it's so crazy, but it's LinkedIn.
Yeah. How come?
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah. How come? How do you use LinkedIn?
Well, it just is from networking. I think that I had 24 connections August of last year.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like me. I'm laughing because that sounds like me.
it's so crazy. And then when I got laid off, I just started researching and reaching out. And that was the other thing that I will say when I decided to make this, to really focus on these female found brands. I felt as though I had been granted access to one of the most amazing clubs of women entrepreneurs and female founders, and, just women building each other up. And it's just kind of amazing. So it was really inspiring. So I would spend, hours just reading about people and learning about, different products. And it's been a massive resource.
That's awesome. What is a book that you could recommend to the audience?
Oh gosh. I mean, that's where it's really bad. Not a big reader. Let me think. I mean, here's a funny one. My son, who's 20,
Mm-hmm.
he was really active as a youngster, and a little excessively. And I read the book Raising Your Spirited Child,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually helped me. It helps me still till this day in things. So it talked about don't call them difficult, right? Call them spirited. Don't call them, anxious, call them excited. And so it taught me to rephrase and reword. And I still use that practice till this day, where it's instead of that guy's an asshole, maybe that guy's having a bad day. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wish I had a more recent one, but I do.
No, but
It's something I refer to on the daily. So
well, so let me rephrase that then. You obviously have a lot of deep experience and knowledge. Where do you learn? Where do you go to learn? What resources do you tap for that?
yeah, I mean, I think obviously online, there's just, I read about, I do the rabbit holes, where I'll be
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, whether it's an ingredient or a person or something that's happening, then I can go and look it up, and then I might spend hours, and I might end up in a completely different place than I started.
Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, the internet is really kind of that place for me.
Yeah, I do that as well. A new term I keep hearing is the University of YouTube. And just just learning and just watching so
That's
many.
so funny. Yeah, my husband's a big YouTuber. I mean,
Yeah.
not he researches them. I mean, watches them. He if he can't
Mm-hmm.
figure something out, he's like, "Oh, I'll check it out. I'll check it. So it's got to be on YouTube." And it's pretty good. I like that. But I
Yeah.
usually try for more credible sources, whether it's the Mayo Clinic or FDA on ingredients or something like that. I try not to YouTube too much about things that I'm really trying to learn about.
It's interesting. I mean, I use it a lot from the technical angle, and trying to learn, new things that are happening in tech. And one of the things that I really like is actually all these conferences are now they're now, on YouTube. They put them on
Yeah,
YouTube. And so it's like you can attend a whole conference, without having to leave, without having to go anywhere. And that's one of the ways that I keep up. And I've seen similar things happening in different industries. This isn't just a tech thing, and
totally.
so yes, you need to be aware of the less credible sources out there, but I think you can find a lot of great stuff,
Yeah,
from very sort of leading and reputable sources on YouTube. So
that's great.
yeah, let's see a couple more. What is one piece of advice that you'd give your 21-year-old self?
Oh gosh. I mean, it goes back to don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a lot of big things happen in life, and it's so, yeah, it's so important to just, let some of that stuff go. Don't hang on to things.
yeah. And then who is one person in your field of work, or, another entrepreneur, or just somebody that you would like to take to lunch?
Hmm. I mean, Kiara Daly is amazing. I don't know if you know her. I was very fortunate enough to have a conversation with her. She's from Pepsi, Frito-Lay. She does the natural stuff, but she's such a visionary for female found brands. And she just is, yeah. I mean, somebody like that to connect with is amazing. Somebody, who you can share she's just, when you see people who see things on such a greater level, and it's like, I always feel like, oh, I want to make such a big impact, or this can be so much bigger, or this would be really cool. And then you see people, you're like, wow, she's really making an impact, and she's doing things on such a bigger level.
Kiara Daly. That's her name? Kiara. Okay. Well, yeah, Mia, this has been great. I think that you're making an impact and you're making a difference. And I appreciate you jumping on to share with us. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are, either thinking about launching a brand, they're in the middle of creating their brand, or they're running one and kind of in the grind. Do you have any, parting pieces of advice that you could leave them with?
Yeah. Don't wait. Don't put it off any further. Just do it. Just get started.
Okay, that's great. And then that's a good note to end on. Hey, appreciate you being here. I think you've been a fabulous guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun talking to you. I really appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
The Physical Product Movement Podcast is brought to you by Fiddle. To find out more about Fiddle and how our industry-leading inventory ops platform is giving modern brands and manufacturers full visibility into their inventory and operations, visit fiddle.io. And then make sure to search for Physical Product Movement in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Fiddle, thanks for listening.